Live. Okay, I think we're live on YouTube.
Let's get it on.
And Instagram. Didn't work. Hang on. Let me get the... All right, we're on. You can join me on Instagram.
Let's do it now.
Oops. What is up, everyone? Give us a shout out if you are watching this.
Yo, Felipe, on Instagram, I think your phone is sideways, no?
I just fixed it.
Sweet.
There you go. YouTube, what's going on? Who's in? Who's in? Who's in? There you go. We've got Gennaro on Instagram. We'll do it live. I'm just going to wave at everybody like usual. Some known faces around. Good stuff.
Nice. Yes, heating up the Instagram crew.
Oops. Got a lower
Yo, hello.
volume. All right. All right, we can start. I think we're all good and go. What is up, everyone?
Yes, Patrick, everything cool?
People on Instagram, people on YouTube over here. Today, working on my garden, so I'll have to miss most of this live stream. Yeah, that's a good enough reason. So, but you can listen to it maybe while you're on your garden. That's the only excuse.
And come back.
The only excuse for missing this live stream is working on your garden.
Pruning your trees.
Exactly.
Planting your grass while the rain is on.
All right, guys. So
all
today
right,
we're going to
guys.
be talking about having agroforestry systems focused on grass production. And I guess that might be a kind of counterintuitive for many people, because people think that, oh, we're going to do agroforestry, so it's all trees, right? But in fact, grass is an amazing plant, and very often we want to have grass as the main crop of our agroforestry systems. You know, sometimes when we want to raise animals and we want to have them grazing around, so you want to have perennial grasses in the system for grazing, you know, as the main crop, besides obviously grassing having a major important role in other systems when you're producing fruit, when you're producing vegetables, because you're going to be using it as mulch. But when we talk about having grass as the focus of production for animal feed, that's a topic that personally I love it. And because I think grass is raising animals is such an important part of regenerating ecosystems, and we can do so much with animals if we work with them properly. So it's quite a fond. I'm quite fond of this topic.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's one of the ways that we can have, you know, one of the biggest impacts. It's not so much introducing grass into agroforestry, but introducing agroforestry into grass, if you see what I mean. There's so much grasslands, so much pasture lands around, And personally, I believe if if we can have an impact on these kind of pastures, on the farmers that have the livestock, if they can introduce forestry into their pasture systems, that's where I think we're gonna have the greatest impact. Because obviously, we all as human beings are running around, we're chasing all our debt with the earth, right? We're trying to pay things back, and I think one of the most powerful ways we can do that is actually, incorporating forestry systems in our, in pastures. That is so key, isn't it? So many pastures were old forests, and forests is getting brought down, for pastures. And how about let's do it together, And I think that is really the key for sustainability and and enrichment.
Yeah, one interesting thing to think about whenever I see people raising animals is that most animals they actually come from the forest, right? And they will express that behavior. You can see that many of them, they are hungry for trees. So that's why they will very often, people will complain that, oh, how are you going to implement trees in your pasture, because the animals will eat all of the trees. And this is something I always tell people, animals are hungry for trees. They want to eat trees because obviously if you have different species, and you have grasses, you have trees, you have many species of trees and shrubs and legumes, each species will have a different nutritional composition. So it's very important for animals to have a diverse diet. So even though we ruminants will have most of their diet coming from grass itself, having trees around can be a major source of complementary feed for the animals, as they will have a different nutritional balance, and it will definitely help them with being healthy, just like us. We like a diverse diet, and it's healthy for us, and for animals it's the same thing. And you can see that the animals love having trees around, for many reasons, for the shade, for the feed. And so we definitely need to have grass. Our pasture should be inside agroforestry systems, and we really need to change that conventional mindset of that having trees in the pasture is bad. Many people here in Brazil, old ranchers, they will actually think that having trees around will reduce pasture production, but that's actually the opposite. Having trees around will increase pasture production in many cases, and not only increase pasture production, but increase protein content of the pasture. The pasture will stay green for longer. So it's definitely a must have. If you want to produce grass, you need to be producing it inside agroforestry systems. For me, it's
and just like animals love grass loves the forest as well, doesn't it? I mean, just like animals have a variety of wealth, a variety of feed. Grass also wants to have a variety of information in the soil, right? The forest brings so much information and enriches the soil in such ways that grass roots work, wonders. And when they're interacting with, tree roots, traveling from underneath and things like that. And it's so vivid, even those grasses that are said to be, full sun grass, so vivid when you go through the drought, how many more months you can get, 2 months more grass, within the drought, still green. You're well into the drought and your grass is still green. So grass loves forest as well.
Yeah, and Eric is already asking here on YouTube, Eric, Intelligent Green Permaculture Suriname, is asking what kind of grass would you advise for chickens in the tropics? That's you want Bermuda grass, no doubt, and all that family of Bermuda grasses. There are many different varieties and species, but all of the genus, I don't know how they pronounce it in English, but Cynodon. I'm gonna write it here in the. It's definitely one of my favorite grasses for chicken because it's a crawling grass. So, and it's got most of its mass it's a leafy mass. There's not so much stalk, and since it's a running grass, it doesn't really have the chicken cannot kind of peek inside the buds and kill the grass because it's running around like a vine, and it recovers very well from after the chicken graze. And as the chicken will, kind of trample on the grass and, maybe be messing with the soil a bit, this grass actually benefits from it because it's, well, the way to plant it is you prepare the soil, you spread the vines around the soil, and then you come in with a harrow and pass it over it so that you incorporate these vines into the soil. They will take root. So just imagine the response that grass can have with a chicken kind of, scraping the soil with its feet and burying parts of the vine. So it's like it can be a continuous cycle. And so that's, for me, that's the perfect one. And it will.
And they tend to have very high
protein content.
Yeah,
is that what you were going to say?
Yeah,
you cut off a bit.
Very nice. Yeah, the grasses, 18%. It's heard of like up to 20%. And even if you cut it and make hay out of it, you get like 14%. So there's some premium grasses. I know, like horse lovers, when they want to give the best of the best to the horses, this is what they give as well. The Bermuda grasses.
Yeah, Bermuda grass is amazing.
Very palatable as well. You see.
Exactly, very palatable, and it goes very well with perennial peanut grass. So you can have both of them together, which is pretty awesome because also perennial peanut has such a high nutrient protein content. But you do have to know that it is a running grass. It will take over everything if you don't manage it. So it's one of those marriages that it's hard to get a divorce later on if you need to. So that's important to know. Gennaro had a problem with that marriage. He wanted to get a divorce. I tried hiring the black velvet beans to.
Oh yes. I
tried hiring the black velvet beans to execute the divorce between Bermuda grass and Gennaro, but it didn't work.
And then I remembered what Anish said. It actually consortiums quite well with Mombasa, since things like brachiata grass, it shoots from the base and it goes sideways and up, so it occupies that ground layer before it shoots up. And Mombasa kind of shoots straight up already, leaving gaps where these Bermuda grasses can roam in between. So it is actually viable to consortium those two.
Yeah, it is great, but that's it. It's important to know what it is for, because it's not that kind of grass that can have two functions, in the sense that if you have Mombasa grass, you can graze your cows and you can cut it and use it as mulch, but you definitely don't want to be cutting Bermuda grass and using it as mulch directly, because it might completely, sprout in your row of trees. So it's it's a great grass, my favorite for chicken and for pigs as well. But you got to know when to use it and how to use it. What you say now? And it's your favorite? Yeah, good. Premium for horses as well.
And for horses.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
premium.
Lots of people use it for dairy cow as well. For dairy cows, it's
Yeah.
very
The negative,
grass.
you know, the negative thing about it is, like Felipe said, you know, it roams and that can get into like your tree rows and really suck a bit out of that. But also volume, you know, what's the secret? Why doesn't everyone plant it? Because, you know, it doesn't compete volume wise, you know, as you know, a well-managed Bermuda grass field, you know, you could harvest up to, you know, 30 tons a year, but a well-managed Mombasa, you know, from what I know, about 80 tons a year, you know, so it can be per hectare, right? Obviously there's different fertilizations and different irrigation schemes, but it gives you an idea of the kind of volume, you know, the difference in volume. So that's why, you know, a lot of people, when they work in smaller areas and they need to be more aggressive. I mean, for chickens, it's a no-brainer. For chickens, it's a no-brainer. But when you're talking about big animals that you need, you know, large amounts and, you know, smaller areas, and there's lots of technology, right? You know, there's a lot of fancy sprays and everything that kills the weed and maintains those grasses. It's horrible, but people will sell you lots of technologies on you know, on the monoculture, and it's a bit difficult to keep, you know, to keep it clean, like organically. You know, doesn't come up and you know, close up the spots and sensors, doesn't shade things off as easily as, you know, some taller grasses can do, you know. So there is that point of it as well.
Yeah. Cool. Rural Semborn is saying that pigeon peas are perfect as well. Yes, they are. Pigeon peas are perfect. They are a perfect plant. So, and they could be consortiated with grass as well. So that's a pretty good thing to have around your pasture. But they're not a grass, so that's not the topic of today's video. Although we love it. So yeah, the idea behind grass production, for me, I like to say that it's like grazing animals properly, you know, using a decent pasture management with your animals. That coupled with agroforestry is the best combination for which creates the most potential for regenerating and enriching ecosystems. I have no doubt about that. You know, if you do, you can have a great impact by grazing animals alone, even without having trees around. You can have a great impact by just doing agroforestry without having animals around. But when you do both of them together, it's the highest potential that you have to enrich and regenerate ecosystems. So it is definitely a very interesting possibility for many places in the world to have agroforestry systems for grass production, for grazing animals, because many places are not actually so suitable for fruit production, for vegetable production, but they're perfectly well suited for grass production, and we can use that advantage. We can use that to our advantage and create systems designed for that, for having beautiful grass fields for our animals to graze, and then we can produce high quality food for ourselves and for everybody.
So we've got a question here. So in the YouTube where it says, I'm starting to trial agroforestry. This will be my first time growing grass. I have limited seeds of Mombasa. How would you advise to use it so I could establish more in the future? All right. Well, you know, it'd be great if you could get some more seeds in. It'd be great. Because, you know, if we just like to give it that information, of cutting in the grazing, either through grazing or through mulching. Once it seeds, kind of like it takes the most out of the plant, and it takes the energy all the way to the seed. And then for the system, it's not optimizing in the sense where then, if you're harvesting, you're not returning, and you're not feeding. So, I mean, sure, you're harvesting some seeds, but then, the biomass left over is not going to be premium, highly nutritious material. One thing I have done, I have planted it from, would you say cuttings? When you take out little stems from the base. It's not very common. I had never seen it before, but I have done it, and I have planted it where we've taken one chunk out and actually made many seedlings out of one chunk. So I suppose if I had to spread it in a way which it depended on me waiting for it to seed, I would rather propagate it through cuttings rather than collecting seeds. Now, often you might want to enrich and let it seed and let the seeds come back, or even go harvest the seeds and things like that. But I mean, for the time, I don't know about the investment and the availability, with the online, separate the clumps like you're saying there. But sometimes, it's just worth going out and getting those seeds. Even I've got these elephant grass, you're right, cuttings is new technology, elephant grass, it's new launched elephant grass, the greatest of the greatest, whatever, and I'm planting it, and I have to pay $300 each time, and I get 300, eyes for it, and I'm planting it, but I'd rather buy it again than necessarily propagating it in my situation here, because I really want to expand, and it's so valuable to my system, it's so valuable to the animals, and it's just like it's worth the investment, in my point of view, in bringing in the propagating material so that I can expand. But that is in my situation where I have so many animals, I need it for now, so I suppose if you're if you've got time, and like agriculture is 1 year after the other, if you are happy to plant a little bit of your Mombasa, harvest the seeds so that next year and this and that.
It really depends on the situation, what situation you're in, and if it's something that it's a very hard thing for you to acquire more seeds because it's impossible to buy, or because the price is ridiculous, and you really only have a few, then it's actually you'd have to plant them in the field for seed propagation. And I wouldn't even recommend you to put in your agroforestry. I'd recommend you to put it in a separate field so that you can harvest the seeds. Because like Gennaro said, if you put it into your agroforestry system, you're going to want to cut it for maximum biomass production. You don't want to let it become huge and flower. So you would put it into a separate field, also because harvesting the seeds is quite a nuisance for Mombasa grass, because they won't ripen all at the same time. So you actually have to have rows, and then you're going to put like a plastic sheet in the middle of the row so that you can kind of brush the seeds off and harvest them on the floor, on top of the soil, so that you only get mature seeds. This will guarantee maximum germination rate. So if it's really only a few, and there's no way you acquire more, then I'd recommend doing a separate field for seed production, right? But like Gennaro said, it's always better if you are able to get material somewhere so that you can already establish in a large area and already put it inside your agroforestry systems, and you don't have to worry about propagating it inside the farm, so that you can just cut it and feed back to the soil. But yeah, separating the clumps, it does work, but it wasn't highly successful, was it? I remember we did it.
Yep. Well, it wasn't highly successful. There's a few other things that might have influenced. I mean, it was inside an already established system with a lot of shade. we appreciate that Mombasa can, we appreciate Mombasa can withhold shade. And yeah, I do feel like it's a better information, planting it by seed, but it is an option. And I suppose if I had to propagate it, and if it was full repropagation, so I had to save the species, I probably would go down that line. Because like I said, just the harvesting the seeds of the Mombasa is quite a nuisance. So in between harvesting Mombasa seeds and planting it by clumps, I'd rather plant it by clumps. But if I had seeds available and and then I had clumps available, I'd rather plant it by seed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but depending on how much you want to scale in the future, like
Sure.
let's say you're starting out with 50 square meters, but you plan on like 3 years down the line, oh, I want to be planting 3 hectares. You're never going to be able to multiply it like that through clumps, right? One
Yeah, too much
idea,
labor.
so depending on scale, so you can see that it all depends, and that's why it's really important to think ahead so that you can plan properly. But one thing you can do is get half of your seeds and use it in your system. Get half of your seeds and plant in a separate plot for seed propagation, so that you guarantee you're going to have more. And you can, but you already start inserting Mombasa in your system so that you can learn to manage it and to use it in the system for biomass production or for feeding your cows or sheep or whatever it is that you're raising over there, man. So that's what I would recommend. What else, guys?
I'm gonna shout out to the No Dig crew from the UK. My friend Jesse, who's linking up, putting people together. Shout out to
Who is
you.
it? James Stanley Street.
No, we've got it here. Look,
Where?
this is the No Dig movement. Showed up here a second ago. The people
In
with
Instagram or on YouTube?
Instagram things. And it's just friends, Jesse's been linking up other people. It's great. It's great.
All right. Shout
Yeah,
out.
see, talking about. All right.
We had a question here in Instagram from Maria Rita. How you doing, Maria? She's asking for chicken. She asked in Portuguese. That's you cannot do that. I'm gonna answer you, but it's only this time. You can never ask in Portuguese again here. And I know that you speak English, so there's no reason for you to ask in Portuguese. She's asking each paddock for chicken. Each paddock with a type of grass or a mix of grasses in the same paddock, and what's the spacing in the paddock for each chicken? It's a very good question. So you can, oops, almost ended the video. You can have a mix of grasses in the same paddock. There is a potential problem, especially here in the tropics, which is this. Different species of grass, they have different resting periods between cuts, right? So once the chicken or the cows or whatever animal go into the paddock, they're going to eat the whole thing. You're going to take them out, and they're going to the paddock is going to rest for it to replenish its reserves. But then different species of grass will have different resting periods. So what will happen is that depending on the resting period that you give to your paddock, one of the grasses will gain an advantage over the other. So over the time, it might happen that one of the grasses will just outcompete the others because of these resting periods that you gave. Okay, so this is something that could happen. Ideally, you would want to have different species in the same paddock, so that to have a more to complement the animal feed better. But given this potential problem of resting time, I like to have different species in different paddocks. And then this is very interesting for the animals because each species will also absorb nutrients in different quantities. So there are grasses that will be richer in copper. There are grasses which will be richer in selenium. There are grasses which will have more calcium. Grasses which have, so they will have different chemical compositions, especially in regards to micronutrients and all that. So it's really good for your animals to have the opportunity to graze in different paddocks with different grasses. This is a pretty cool thing. So that's a very good question, and that's actually something that in Brazil we need to do that more. We most ranchers, they will have one grass only in the whole farm, and that's not the ideal situation. Now, the second part of your question, what's the spacing, how much space each chicken requires inside the paddock? This is a tricky question because it will depend on a lot of things, especially how many paddocks you have, because the more paddocks you have, the smaller the area for each chicken. I like working with 30 to 50 paddocks at least. And in that case, I put between 4 and 8 chicken per square meter. That's 4 to 8 chicken per square meter in the paddock. The organic certification entities don't really like that, but that's what I like to do, and it works pretty nice. But then, of course, chicken are not feeding only on grass, right? They're receiving grains and other stuff as well. So that's these are my recommendations. And then when you consider the whole area, because you have two.
Yeah.
Just for me to finish an idea here, you have the instant load of that means how many animals are in the paddock, and then you have the total load of the area, right? So if you sum up the area for all of your paddocks, you should have at least 5 square meters per chicken, ideally between 7 and 10. So that would be total load in the paddock. And then instant load would be 4 to 8 chicken per square meter.
Yeah, we wouldn't want it, we like to, imprison chickens into tight, small areas, but it is the principle of, maximum amount of animals for the shorter amount of time on the pasture. So, so that animal can be in and out, so the way to do that is to, up the numbers of animals, right? And then that's one of the key principles in enriching the grass, actually. How with the even cut, the grazing information, the animals need to come in with the even cut it all at once as quick as possible. They need to be out there leaving it to rest by the time they come back, because how when they resprout, if they're going back and they're eating the resprouts, then they're already eating the reserves, that the root stock for regrowth. So they really need to eat and leave as quick as possible. That's why we up the animal tally per square meter in that physical square, that pasture for them. And then we're going to the voisin. How does grass enriching? How does grass enriching? Should we go through some of the basic voisin principles? Obviously cutting, and if they come in high density and eat all at once, they're going to eat type A, type B, and type C of the grass, right? Or they might eat the type A and type B, and you might want to cut back down that last third, so you're always returning 30% and helping feed something back. So there's two ways, but if they coming into the pastures and coming back and in and out, they'll always be eating just the type A, and then maybe some resprouts. It won't be diets, you see for like dairy cows, they're very responsive to the diet that they have on the day. If they have quality leafage today, they will perform well today in terms of quality milk. But if they, so if they're in the pasture, and it takes them 3 days to eat this pasture, on the first day, they're going to eat all the type A grass at the top, and they're going to produce one type of milk. In the second day, they're going to eat all the type B. And then in the third day, they're going to be forced to eat the type C grass, and that's going to reflect negatively on that day of that dairy. So we really want animals coming in and eating, the whole spectrum in one go, being there for less time, step in, less step, more time with no stepping, right? As they're out the paddock already, leaving it to recuperate. So it'll be, and I think that there's so much more to say about that, Felipe. What do you want to add?
No, I think that's it. There's another, but besides this thing of the type A, type B, and type C is very important, because animals will always give preference to the best part of the grass, of course. And besides that, which will have an impact, right? Because they're going to have, on day one, they're eating like high quality food, so they'll produce their maximum, right? And then day two, it's going to lower the amount they produce. And day three, it's going to lower even more. And then there's another factor, which is not only the quality of the grass, but the quantity as well, which is they will actually eat less. Like animals, if they eat X on day one, they're going to eat a little bit less than X on day two, and they're going to eat even less on day three, and even less and less. So it's this is actually the fourth law of rational herding, which is the maximum productivity of the animal is when it only stays in the same paddock for a day, right? And if you want to have, this is the maximum. If you want to have regular yields, you cannot leave it more than 3 days in the same paddock. And this is for this thing, right, of the quantities and the quality that the animal is going to produce. If you leave it for more than 3 days, yields are not going to be regular. They're going to be oscillating a lot, because one day the animal is going to be eating high quality food in high quantity. The other day it's going to be eating bad food in bad quality. So this is that's why it's so important, this thing that Gennaro is saying about, intense occupation and fast movement. Animals need to be moving over the grass. James is asking here in Instagram, I have noticed the benefits of sorghum as a biomulch over panicum maximum. I feel it may be due to high sugar content feeding the bacterial food web. What do you think? I didn't understand exactly the question. You're saying you found it better than panicum maximum. Is that it? Can you clarify that for us? If you're still around,
yeah,
yes, you are.
Heard, right?
What?
Oh yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, he said I've noticed.
Yeah, I love sorghum, man. Sorghum. The one of the reasons I love sorghum is that it's much easier to produce seeds of sorghum than Mombasa. So and it's got more uses because I can use the grain to feed chicken and other stuff.
Yeah, but inevitably, right?
Could definitely have that stronger impact on the soil food web. So I could think of that. And also, when you cut sorghum, it usually has a lot. It's got really thick and lignified stems, and Mombasa doesn't. So Mombasa, if we're cutting it at a proper rate, it will be less lignified, whereas sorghum will have very thick canes, and so we're going to produce more lignin, basically. But of course, sorghum won't allow for so many cuts as the Mombasa. Sorghum will take longer to resprout and to be ready for a new cut, right? Mombasa will be cut on a much faster basis.
That's just the thing, isn't it? I appreciate its quality, and if the seeds are available as well, or if you can, it is a good choice as well. But if you're considering if it's for mulching biomass, already in your consortium you should account for other things, for So I love actually the sugarcane as well. I love the sugarcane for that sugar content thing. So also
Sugarcane is
accounting,
amazing.
other material as well. You have your legumes and other things for chop and drop. But if it's just the power of Mombasa to re-sprout, and how many cuts you get of a rainy season. When it's all nicely fertile, when it's seriously fertile, we're talking every 20 days, and so this is where it differentiates really.
Yeah, but this could I mean, sugarcane does something amazing because of the sugar content of really encouraging bacteria to thrive. And sorghum, of course, will have a slightly lower sugar content, but still it has quite a lot. So it's definitely something cool, especially when you have very degraded soils, which are completely dead. Having something with a higher sugar content is desirable. And some people even recommend. Sorry, guys, I'm just killing mosquitoes here. Some people even recommend, when you're working with really degraded soils, for you to incorporate some sugar into the soil, like 5 kilos per acre or per hectare, or something like that. I never tried it, but I found it quite an interesting proposition, because it will really stimulate microorganisms. We have a couple of comments here in YouTube. Kyle Lopez say greetings from Brazil. Greetings from Brazil as well, man. Talk about grass and veg systems that Mark Lieber mentioned in his visit at Ernest's place, please. I don't know who. Do you know who this guy is? I don't know who this guy is.
I'm sorry. I really am sorry. We'll look it up.
Yeah. You guys are doing an amazing job, by the way. Thanks. Thank you for the support, man. We really appreciate it. This is what keeps us going, knowing that people are liking it and it's being useful to you guys. Any information around hemp and its role within an agroforestry system? In the future, we'll probably be doing some videos about that, as there's some things going on. But in order for us not to move away from the topic of grass production, we're gonna leave that for later. Can sorghum tolerate shades as much as Mombasa? Not at all. Sorghum is an emergent plant, not a medium to low stratum plant like Mombasa. It does not tolerate shade. It will be in your system for 1 year maximum, couple of years, depending on how close your rows of trees are and what else you have. But it will get weak and die eventually when the system is overshaded. It's going to start having long canes. It's not going to produce those thick canes because it will be striving for sunlight. There's a name for that. I never remember the name in English, but I think it's etiolation or something like that. So intelligent Eric,
I mean,
do you want to add something?
Yeah. This is the key. Talk about grass. If 3 times we mentioned Mombasa, it's because in agroforestry systems, it's vigorous. It's one of the champion vigorous plants. But like Felipe always reminds me, we shouldn't be caught up, just hanging on to that plant for the sake of it. Let's consider in different situations, different areas, and things like that. But the Mombasa keeps on coming back to the topic because it withholds shade so well. So that was the point. And when we mentioned about the shade versus the sorghum, and versus so many other beautiful grasses that are appropriate for agroforestry systems. The thing is, as the system develops in towards the second year, even though every grass appreciates shade, a certain level of shade, if you're talking about an intensive system, closed up, with more fruit production integrated with grass, and maybe sometimes putting tree rows, closer tree rows. This is the grass that's really vigorous in the shade. So I like planting a consortium of grasses initially. Mombasa is not, well, when you first seed it, it comes out very thin, for that first cut. It is a little bit slow off the mark, compared to, say, an elephant grass, which is straight shooting up, already thick. But, you get that slow information of the mark. But that's why I like giving it a nice consortium of grasses initially, where the Mombasa is not the main man in the first 6 months. But after, you're going into the second cut, and then he starts competing with the other vigorous grasses. And then in the second year, third year, when things really shade out, he's the legacy. He's the one who's there still. So it's, it's because he stays as a legacy. So from the consortium, he's got a role to play like others do in the beginning, like the sorghums and the elephant grasses as placenta plants, as grass production initially, for biomass production, certainly.
We have a pretty interesting question here from Eric. He's asking, is it possible to grow an annual grass like rice in a perennial grass system? Which is quite awesome because when we thought of a grass system, we were thinking about grass that you feed animals, but we have to be true to the word and acknowledge that and appreciate that, rice and corn and sorghum and rye and oats and barley, and wheat, all of these are grasses. So we should contemplate them as well in our grass system. So very, very well pointed out. You can definitely grow that in a perennial system, but understand that most of these annual grasses, much like sorghum, they are not. They belong to the placenta stage, and they do not belong to the established system. So when you want to have one of these annual grasses as a main crop in your system, you will, much like you would do in a vegetable system, you will be periodically pruning your rows of trees quite drastically to open up enough sunlight for your rice, for your what else was asked, for your wheat, for your barley, for your oats, for your corn, whatever it is. You want to open up that clearing, create that initial stage of the placenta, and then plant these annual grasses. This is the perfect situation if you want to do it on an ongoing basis, right? You need to be pruning it down.
Yeah, so if you, on an ongoing basis, you have that system designed to be kept pruned and the light coming in. But, on fruit systems as well, if you want to, if you really feel to have the opportunity, in the first year, as a placenta, as an initial grass, so at the initial stage of the forest, you're able to produce rice. If you want to design a system to keep it pruned to be a rice producer as well, enriching in soil and everything else, there's that way. And also, if you want to take the opportunity this year, you open areas every year. Say every year you open a new area and you kind of like expand slowly. Every year you can have a plot of rice, as you expand, if your conditions are appropriate.
I think it's raining. Thank God. Yeah, except my clothes is hanging outside, so it's not good. But they say it's bad luck if you've got your clothes, if you just did laundry and you've got your clothes hanging and you take it away because it's going to rain, it's bad luck. So as a farmer, we cannot do it.
Wow. Well, today I bought half of it in and half of it was just too late. So it's out in the rain.
Good, because it gets washed again.
There you go.
Why not?
Nice.
Why wash it?
So guys,
once?
I mean, should we tell them, this has been real exciting times for the Academy. We're actually, this is a week where we're going to be talking about grass production. We've got these themes. We're doing a series of 3 weeks. We're in the second week now. The first week was for fruit systems. And then next week, we're going to be talking about vegetable production as well in agroforestry systems. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things going on around it, but we're back live here on the Thursday evening as well, same time, 8 p.m. GMT -3. There's that going on, and then to put the gold cup on the week, we have an ebook as well. So we produced. Always want to understand from you what it is that you want us, to be talking about, and and in those replies, we had a lot of people asking, about printable material, reference material that they can have it, just on hand, just to reference things, on certain topics. So we felt, an ebook, a very comprehensive ebook on each of these topics. So we're initiating with these three, right, where we're talking about, like I said, the fruit system, the grass system, and the veg system. But we will certainly in the nearby future be discussing, more topics. There's so many nice things and interesting hot topics in agroforestry. So there's no reason why we can't expand the series. But initially, we've got a plan. It's a 3-week project, 3 series of ebooks, and so with the themed week to go with it, and that's really great. This ebook is available for our Patreon community. Yes, some of you here from the Patreon community. It's really cool because we get to know you. It's one of the most exciting things when a new patron joins. I'll wait, to see him in the webinar. I see him in the, in our Q&A sessions. We really get to know you, and you have the opportunity where we can discuss things in a group. And it's all the people there in the Patreon community, they're real, they're real connected. It's the people that have taken that step that really, I really care. I'm really interested in this, so, I really want to either, help the channel, support the channel, or it's something that, I'm prepared to get my pen and pad and, learn the most I can from the community. I won't even say Felipe and I, we're there, we're present, we've got all the activities for the Patreon teams. If you don't know, the Patreon platform is a platform designed, to support, projects. Felipe and I, we've got this project. We've been around for a couple of years, and we discovered this is a great way you guys can support the channel. So you sign up to be a patron. There's a $7.90 tier, and already you're supporting the channel and you're helping us keep the best. The core of our content free. We have our course, our Agroforestry Academy course. It's free. We're not selling the course. We're not selling the core of the content, and some of our content is that we're there every weekend. We've got a new video and things like that. So the Patreon team, they get something back. They get the material in advance. Okay, we've got webinar Q&As. We do a few nice interaction community in that sense.
Speaking of which, last week we launched the ebook about fruit production, and for each ebook, we are giving away a bonus webinar for the Patreon community. So besides the ebook, whenever you join the Patreon community, the ebook is going to be there for you to download. But you can take part in the webinar if you join before the webinar happens, of course. And so the webinar of fruit production is going to happen tomorrow. So, we're going to be diving deeper into a couple of topics which are related to fruit production and agroforestry systems. It's going to be an opportunity to have a closer interaction with us. So you still have the opportunity to take part in the webinar because it's going to happen tomorrow. So if you join us until tomorrow, it's going to happen at 8 p.m., right, Janar? 8 p.m. So,
yep.
You've got until 8 p.m. to join in. Look for the Zoom link and take part in that webinar, which will happen tomorrow. So, take the opportunity.
I think it was a 4 p.m. thing, wasn't it? I think it was a 4 p.m. thing, actually, wasn't it? I think we discussed.
It was a 4 p.m. thing.
Yeah, we discussed with our friends there, with the community, and for everyone, because people from all hours around the world, and it was discussed, and we come up with the 4 p.m.
Exactly.
Actually on
that
it was
one. 4 p.m. That's it. GMT -3. So it's so you've got exactly 19 hours to join us there. So make sure you do it. You're going to get access to the ebook. You've got time to read it, write down your doubts so that you can ask it in the webinar. And
the cool thing
that's
is
it.
next
I think
week,
we can round up. But before we round up,
next week we're going to be there with the webinar about the grass production, and then the following week with the webinar. And we always, you know, new things for the patient. And when this series is up, we'll think of something else for the patients. We always, you know, seeing what we can to, you know, to appreciate.
Before we round up, let's just take one last question from James Stanley Street. I said, hey, for your larger scale forest, do you use machinery like brush cutters for grass reduction? Yes, of course. You got to use machinery for large scale. There's no way you can do large areas with a machete or a scythe. So brush cutters, sickle bar cutters, but bush hogs, depending on the situation. It's important to understand that many of these machines, they're used for cutting grass without regards for how they cut the grass. We want to have clean cuts. So some tools are better for that. A scythe has a much cleaner cut than a brush cutter. So, you know, if you have a level field without twigs and branches in the middle, a very sharp scythe with a well-trained person can do a job faster than a brush cutter, and with a cleaner cut that will trigger a faster response from the grass, because brush cutters, they will kind of tear the leaves apart, and this will damage the grass, and you know, it will take longer to resprout. And many tractors implements will also kind of make a huge mess out of the grass, and it will take longer to resprout. So you really want to have sharp tools which will cut the grass clean like a razor, so that you don't hurt the grass, right? So clean cut, so it resprouts strongly. That's just to answer your question. But yes, you got to use machinery if you have larger areas.
You know how we are, one topic leads to another, so I feel to say this, you know, when we're talking about hurting the grass, you know, if you're producing grass, you know, respect the grass like a plant. You know, it's incredible. Like you see the people that love grass, like not wanting to step on the grass, like stepping around the grass. See, so that's what it gets to, you know, respect the grass. Don't step on the baby grass. You know what I mean? Treat it like a culture. Treat it like a plant.
Yeah, treat it like a crop. That's a good point. You got to treat grass like a crop. Yeah. All right, guys. So let's round it up. If you guys haven't yet, join our Patreon community. But most important of all, especially if you're watching on Instagram, go over to YouTube. It's right down here, YouTube. You see it? So that you give the like button. You know what? That's one of the best ways to support the channel if you're not joining the Patreon community. Just give us a like, give us a shout out in our videos. Comment a lot, ask questions in the YouTube channel. The more you stir up the channel, the more people are going to find out about it, because there's those algorithms that people talk about. I don't know who these people are, but they're supposedly there somewhere. So yeah.
Nice one, John.
Cheers, John. Amor da Irlanda. Cool, man. Ireland. One day I'm going to visit there, because they say the grass is greener in Ireland. In it. So talking about grass. All right, guys. It was a great pleasure. Gennaro, thanks, man. Always a pleasure. And
nice one.
We'll be together soon.
Yeah, we're back.
You guys are totally crushing it. Thanks for all
Thursday.
the fantastic work. Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure, man. Cheers. Let me end the stream before I forget.